Back in Georgia, voters are headed back to the polls this morning to decide the nominees in several key Republican primary runoffs, including marquee races for governor and the United States Senate. Let's bring in MS Now reporter Nnamdi Ngannou, who joins us live from Marietta to break down the day's races. Nnamdi, it's a question for any Republican primary, particularly in Georgia, which at times has been willing to elect candidates who defy President Trump. Talk to us, please, about what role the incumbent president is playing in these runoffs.
Well, I think you really hit it on the head. The races today are going to offer a glimpse of where the Republican voter of Georgia is. What do they see the future of their party looking like? Do they want to see candidates that are more reflective of the president's agenda, someone in that Senate race like Mike Collins, who is a staunch supporter, or do they want to see someone who's willing to operate in the same vein as Governor Kemp, who, despite generally supporting the president's agenda, has at times stood up to him and has survived the political repercussions of doing so, the 2020 election being one of those moments. So that's really what we're watching for. Now, President Trump obviously got involved recently endorsing in this race on Sunday. We asked voters, help us understand the impact of that endorsement. Did it push you in one direction or the other? And it was pretty interesting. We got told by one voter here, one conservative voter here in Marietta, who laid out to us that Trump's endorsement was actually, in his view, a negative. I want to play for you portions of that conversation so you can hear why he said he decided to leave the top of the ticket blank when he voted today. Take a listen. Can you just help me understand a little bit more what you mean by Trump's endorsement was actually a negative across the governor and Senate races? I think that would shock a lot of people here. For you. Yeah, tell me, for you personally, just help me understand a little bit more what you mean.
I mean, I was never a big fan of the populism. I think that you should campaign and act on what you believe in rather than just trying to win. That means sometimes you don't win. But I don't think he followed through with a lot of the things he said he was going to do. And there were less for me that I liked, but I did very much like the talking about peace and no new wars, and that we don't need that. We just need diplomacy and trade. And he just went completely against it.
So what's interesting, I asked that voter, well, tell me the kind of Republican you'd want to see. He referenced Thomas Massie, so that gives you a sense of where his head is at. But what we're looking for in terms of the general election this fall is a voter like you just heard from said he isn't going to support the Democratic ticket. He says there's too many value differences there, but he sees himself staying home, and that benefits Ossoff just as much almost as getting that vote. So we're going to be seeing if that dynamic continues as we talk to voters more throughout the day here.
All right, we'll be watching for that. MS Now reporter Nnamdi Ngannou live for us from Georgia this morning. So let's bring in now to talk about it staff writer at The Atlantic, Mark Leibovich, and contributing opinion writer for The New York Times, Molly Jong-Fast. Lebo, you've written extensively over the years about the Republican Party being in Donald Trump's thrall. There have been a few moments lately where some have been willing to defy him. And as we just talked about, Georgia's always been a bit of a wild card. What will you be looking for today?
Well, I mean, it's a kind of a barometer of Trump's hold or maybe sort of loosening hold on the Republican Party. I mean, Georgia's always been kind of a weird state for him. If you'll remember in 2020, he lost the state to Joe Biden. It was not expected. And then, it looked like Republicans had held on to the Senate. But you had this runoff coming later in the year, or early in January. It was actually the day before January 6th. And Trump went down to campaign for the Republicans and basically made a rally, I think it was in Rome, Georgia, all about himself, whereas David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, who were the Republican incumbents, were sort of left out in the cold. It was sort of an awkward scene, and all of a sudden, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, basically upset, won in upsets, and it sort of flipped the whole balance of the Senate. So, Georgia has been a somewhat independent state around Trump. Like you said, Kemp has defied him. We'll see, where we are on the process right now, because it's obviously very important looking to November.
Somali, of those two Georgia senators, Democrats, we talked to Jonathan Martin earlier in the show, and he's on record with his new piece suggests he's predicting that one of them, whether it's Warnock or Ossoff, one of them will have a spot on the Democratic ticket in 2028, either as VP or as the presidential candidate. Talk to us about whether you think that's possible, but at the very least, it does feel like both of these men, for very different reasons, are having a real moment.
Yeah, for sure. And Ossoff has really benefited from this runoff environment, right? I mean, he had a seat to protect, and now all of a sudden he's coming into it. Nobody is saying that anymore. And that was what it looked like a few years ago. So I think this is a big deal. I am hesitant to get involved in 2028 since we still have the midterms coming down the pike. But he has done really well. And one of the things that's been the most interesting about Ossoff is he has been able to walk a line where progressives think he's one of them and centrists think he's one of them. And that is sort of the key when it comes to getting a nomination in this party in this moment, is being able to be everything. And that has worked historically for other candidates. Even if you think about Trump, was able to sort of be a Rorschach when it came to what he would actually do. And one of the problems we've seen with people who are running for president for more than one cycle is that there's so many opinions about them that they can't sort of get out of it.
And Lebo, I think Molly's right in that Ossoff is able to walk that line, and people are able to kind of project upon him what they want to see. He also, for some, has invoked sort of Obama comparisons, young, charismatic, the like. And then Warnock, who preaches from Dr. King's pulpit, which is about as much of a moral authority position as you can have in this country. He has a new book out. He's making some moves as well that people are looking at and going, well, this guy, has made, maybe he's not as buzzy yet anyway as Ossoff, but he's also delivered some really powerful speeches in the Senate about voting rights and the like, that both of them seem like they're on the rise.
Yeah, no, and I think when they both got elected in 2020, a lot of people thought they were sort of short timers just because, Republicans traditionally had done really well in Georgia. And Warnock was reelected in 2022, I guess. I mean, it helped that Herschel Walker was his opponent. And Ossoff, looks like he's pretty well positioned this time around. I mean, he's also, Ossoff is a real advertisement for someone who lays low, kind of keeps his head down, but really has picked his spot and has really gotten a lot of traction, especially around critiques of Trump, which have been quite eloquent and have gone quite viral, which is obviously very beneficial. So I think Georgia, for Democrats holding on to seats, oddly enough, looks safer than some of the other states like Michigan, which has a much more divided Democratic primary. And I'd probably say that Georgia is more likely to stay blue than Michigan at this point.
Yeah, Ossoff's the one who sort of coined the Epstein class phrasing as an attack on Trump and his cronies.